Hi, Grade 5. This week we are reading realistic fiction, Ida B and her plans to maximize fun, avoid disaster, and possibly save the world. The selection that we are reading today is an excerpt, which means it is a part of a full-length novel. Here on page 347, the text in italics is an introduction that summarizes key information that has happened earlier on in the story. So here it summarizes what has happened so far in the novel. Ida B is an independent girl who loves spending time in her family's apple orchard. Unfortunately, Ida B's world turns upside down when her mother is diagnosed with cancer. Her parents are forced to sell part of the orchard to pay medical bills, which means that many of Ida B's beloved trees will be cut down to make room for houses. But that's just the beginning. Ida B finds out that her days of being homeschooled are coming to an end and that she must attend public school. Upset by her mother's illness and her parents' decisions, Ida B stubbornly decides to distance herself from her parents and new classmates. Instead, she chooses to spend time with her dog Rufus and cat Lulu. But through the persistence and encouragement of her teacher, Miss W, Ida B's iron will begin to dissolve. So, what was Ida B's home like before her mother got cancer? We know that Ida enjoyed the apple orchard and she was homeschooled. But after that happened, after her mother was diagnosed with cancer, the trees were cut down and she had to go to public school. And this information about Ida B is important because it will help readers to understand Ida B's feelings and behavior during the story later on as we read. Now, realistic fiction has characters and settings that could really exist. We're going to look at the characters on these pages and see how the characters and setting are realistic. One day after lunch, Miss W told the class, "I know it's time to read, but I don't think I can do it today. My voice is too tired." She put her hand on her throat and scrunched up her face like something was paining her. It was the same face she'd make when Simone Martini was just about yelling across the room to Patrice Polinsky, and Miss W would say, "Simone, use your inside voice. You are hurting my ears." Everyone looked up from their chattering or worksheets at just about the same time, in exactly the same direction, with the same expression on their faces, a mix of 30% shock, 20% disbelief, and 50% plain old sad. "Aw, man," Matthew Dribble said right out loud. "I felt like the bottom had just dropped out of my stomach and everything I ate for lunch was tumbling around in my gut." "Nope, my voice is just too tired," Miss W said. And sure enough, it was sounding weak and raspy. "And we were going to read Alexandra Potemkin in the space shuttle to Planet Z, too. Well, that's disappointing." Miss W sat down, put her head in her hand, and her body wilted. Like not only was her voice tired, but every bone in her body needed a rest. "Please," begged Alice May Grunderman. "Please, Miss Washington," asked Patrice and Simone at the same time with the same moon-eyed face. And then everybody got the idea, and it became a sort of a song with a verse of "Please, Miss Washington," and a chorus of "Please, please, please." But Miss W's voice was deteriorating at an alarming speed, because now she could only speak in a hoarse whisper, and everybody had to stop with their pleasing just to hear her. "I'm sorry, but I can't." She paused, and we could all tell by the look on her face that she was thinking hard, so we stayed quiet to give her some room. "Maybe," she said, looking up and forcing a weak smile, "we could have a guest reader just for today?" Well, it was hard to imagine anybody but Miss W reading, and we all just sat there for a minute. Then, one by one, people started nodding their heads and looking at each other and nodding more and smiling, because nobody wanted to miss story time, not even Tina Politi, who usually slept through it. And after a couple of minutes of that, people started looking at Miss W, nodding their heads real hard, sticking out their chests and saying out loud, "I think that's a great idea. And yes, let's have a guest reader today," because they were realizing that maybe they could be the guest reader and star student of the afternoon. They wanted to remind Miss Washington that not only were they superb readers, but wonderful human beings too. So the teacher here on these pages, Miss W says things that a real teacher would say, such as use your inside voice. The students here are chattering and doing worksheets, which is something that we do in our class. They also say words like "aw man" and "nope," and these are words that real people would say. The story here has a first-person narrator. Who is the narrator of the story? Ida B. And the sentences are written in a way that Ida B might speak them, so the construction might be unusual. Okay, there's one sentence in one of the paragraphs. Ida is describing the responses of her classmates to Miss W's announcement. What is her announcement? That she is not going to be able to read today and she needs a volunteer. So the description of her classmates, the description that Ida B makes of her classmates, shows how much detail she notices about a single moment, from the way the classmates move to the expressions on their faces. So when we read, we use details in the story to predict what might happen next. We know that Miss W's voice is too tired to read, and she suggests a guest reader. So we can predict that many of the students will volunteer to read, but I wouldn't think that Ida would volunteer because we read on the previous page that she distances herself from her classmates and that she keeps to herself. So we're going to look for details that will either help us confirm or revise our prediction on the next page. Especially Calvin, big-headed Faribault, who actually raised his hand, and I just knew it was to volunteer out of the kindness of his big, fat, big-headed heart. But Miss W didn't even look in Calvin's direction. Ida, since I know you've read the book, she said to me weakly, like it was her last request, could you please read the first chapter today? Well, I was so shocked and embarrassed, sitting there with my mouth wide open, that I almost couldn't tell that all the other kids were staring at me with their mouths wide open, too. Making words into story music like Miss W did was the one thing I wanted to do more than just about anything in the world. But telling a story out loud in front of my class at Ernest B. Lawson Elementary School was nearly the last thing I'd want to do in my entire life. I was so confused about whether I should be happy or scared, I just sat there. Miss W got up, walked over to me, put her face next to my stunned and frozen one, and whispered, Ida, I need your help. And there I was, hypnotized by that woman again. I was like a dog that would go fetch Miss W's stick, even if it was in a snake's hole under a thorn bush that had just been sprayed by a skunk. So the narrator is the person who tells the story, and we know Ida is the narrator. Miss W addresses her as Ida, so we know that Ida here, Ida is I and me in the story. Okay, so we think now, what do you think Ida B is going to, is she going to agree to read, or is she going to be too shy? She says that she's hypnotized by Miss W, and she compares herself to a dog that will go fetch Miss W's stick, even if it is in a dangerous place. So this leads us to think that Ida will do whatever Miss W asks her to do. I looked at Miss W, just scared now, because I knew I was going to do it, but I didn't know how. I know you'll be great, she croaked, and in my head I was already trotting off, looking for that stick, even though I could smell the stink and the thorns were pricking me. Do you want to sit here or in my chair? Miss W asked. I'll sit here, I mumbled. She set the book down on my desk, brought her chair over, sat down next to me, put her head back, and closed her eyes. Whenever you're ready, Ida, she rasped. Miss W had given me quite a few books to read already, because it only took me 1 or 2 days at the most to read them, unless I was working on my Terrify the People Who Bought Our Land project. Alexander Potemkin and the Space Shuttle to Planet Z was my favorite so far. It was Rufus's favorite, too. I got tingly in my fingers thinking about opening up the book and reading those words out loud, making my voice go high and low, rough and smooth, like I did in my room. but my legs were shivering like they were out in a blizzard, and my stomach was flipping forward, then backward, thinking about all of those people looking at me and hearing my voice. I closed my eyes, put my right hand on top of the book, and passed it lightly over across the cover. It was cool and smooth like a stone from the bottom of the brook, and it stilled me. A whole other world is inside there, I thought to myself, and that's where I want to be. I opened the book and got ready to read the title, but I could feel everybody's eyes on me, crowding me so there was hardly any air. The only sounds that came out of me were little peeps like a baby bird chirping, Alexandra Potemkin, and the space shuttle to Planet Z. So, how does Ida feel about reading? She's excited about reading, she enjoys it, but her feelings about reading out loud at home are different from her reading out loud at school. At home, she feels confident. She loves changing her voice as she reads, but at school, she feels nervous about other people hearing her read out loud.